What's going on, peoples? It's your boy back with another reaction video. And I will be reacting to 5 creepy, true prom night horror stories. This is from Lazy Masquerade channel. I never heard their channel before. It was recommended to me, so I was like, and I looked at a few of their videos and I was like, oh shit. I'll look at some more of these. I saw this one, prom night. I did not go to my prom. Well, I went outside and I took pictures, but I didn't pay to go in because when I found out, it's funny. I didn't have much money, and when I was a kid, and I was and when I found out that what the price was like $100 a ticket, something like that. And then I was like, hell no. Then you had to rent a car, rent an outfit, and shit like that. Or some people get custom outfits and stuff like that. I'm like, I just thought about it, and I didn't know anybody to borrow a car from. Like my friend, he had a cousin who had like a really fancy car. He played in major leagues, and he had like a fancy car, so he let him borrow his car. Like I ain't nobody borrow a fancy car. I would have to go out and try to rent one. And I was like, oh hell, or try to find and rent one. I was like, nah, I'm good. Everyone had like a brother or a sister or something like that, like a cousin, where they could borrow their car and they had, big old rims on it. And the one guy, he had like an Escalade. Or I think it was his brother's. He had put like a big old, I want to say like 50-inch rims or something like that on it. And I was just like, I ain't gonna ask my so I was like, I ain't going there. I ain't care. So I could just go hang out, which I did. Because everyone, they went inside. I remember I was taking pictures, people, walking up and taking pictures with their outfit on. They went inside. A lot of my friends were in there. They think they were in there because when I left, I thought they were still there. And I got home, and my friend called me. And he was like, oh, we about to go out. We go out. And after, and I was like, oh, y'all done already? I had just gotten home. He's like, yeah, we went in there. It was cool. We were dancing. They did the electric slide and stuff like that. He said, we were never going to stay there. I said, hey, you been an hour. I was like, thank God I didn't pay for that. Like, you paid for the tickets, $100, and rented all the clothes and all that stuff just to be in the prom for like an hour, like less than an hour. Like, man, if I'd have paid for that, I'd have been pissed. I'm staying here all night. $100 and dealing with anxiety, asking somebody out for this shit. Man, bullshit. Anyway, let's get into this. Here we go. The best things happen in the dark. I agree. Or, dimly lit. Oh yeah, go support this person's channel. I'll put a link to this video in the description so you can go to their channel if you've never heard of them. The Tommy incident. Why am I here? I read this as Tommy knockers.
Back when I was in high school, ours was Tommy. He stood at around 6'3" and had the body of a jock, but he was never part of the cool clique. And that's because of his social skills. You see, Tommy was really, truly weird. For example, he once got caught going around collecting roadkill and then mailing the remains through people's doors. He used to get his kicks out of tormenting younger students at our school, but not in that usual way that some people do.
Sound like an asshole.
He would go overboard, hitting them really hard with sticks and forcing them to get on all fours on the ground and then sit on them like they were his chair for long periods of time.
I ought to whoop Tommy's
He did
ass.
so until their limbs or backs gave out. His antics had earned him a suspension in the past. So, like I say, this guy had problems. But because he was so huge and muscular, nobody ever bothered him or called him out on his bullcrap.
He just tried to have me how to whoop
Especially
his
me,
ass.
seeing how small I was for my age. Anyway, within our year group, he mostly kept to himself. That all changed on the night of our prom. It was sometime in the middle of the evening. While I was hanging around the punch bowl, two of my buddies came up to me. They told me that they had seen Tommy outside the venue. He was apparently hanging around out by the surrounding forest all alone, looking completely disheveled. Somehow, he had gotten a hold of a hatchet. They didn't know if he'd found
this
it
dude
somewhere
fucked
or
up.
he'd brought it with him and stashed it.
He is crazy.
Either way, they said he was brandishing it at them, saying some messed up stuff about how someone was gonna meet the Reaper on prom night, and how he just hadn't decided who yet.
Yeah, and it's not called a cop.
What a nut, I said, and proceeded to forget all about it. Just some empty, meaningless nonsense from Tommy the Loon, I figured.
Idiots.
The night continued, and while dancing with my date, I got a sudden urge for a cig. I nabbed a few from my brother earlier without him noticing.
A cigarette?
I'll be right back, I told her.
I thought he said a sick. I think he
walked
said
out
a
into the hall
cig.
and snuck out one of the side doors of the venue. I lit my smoke and relaxed, contemplating the evening. Damn, proms weren't as fun as the movies made them out to be, I thought. As I stood out there all by myself, puffing away, I looked out to the nearby woods. It was dark that night, but thanks to the moonlight, I could just about make something out
You
of
call the
tree.
cops or at least tell
It looked like a person,
an adult.
just standing there. You know when you can just sense that somebody's watching you.
Like, hey,
Well, I couldn't
Tommy's
see their
standing
face,
outside the
but
tree
I could
line
feel their eyes
with a
all over
fucking
me.
hatchet.
Suddenly,
Yeah,
the figure began
like-
full-on sprinting in my direction. My heart skipped a little. It was a tall guy in a tuxedo. He stopped abruptly,
You know
maybe
what?
6
He
feet
actually
away from
wore
me.
a tuxedo, I'm surprised.
It was Tommy. Oh, Scott, old buddy. Boy, am I glad to see you, he said, the same way an alien new to our planet might think a human communicates with another human. Say, why don't you come down to the woods real quick? I've got something I want to show you.
Why don't you fuck
I
off?
think you're really gonna like it. I remembered what my friends had told me earlier, how Tommy had been waving a hatchet around. Luckily, he didn't seem to have it on him.
Plus, he sprinted towards you, then
Yeah,
stopped,
maybe
like
that's what he wanted to show me.
6
in the
feet
woods.
away from you.
No thanks, man, I said. I just want to go back and dance. No offense. I tried pushing the door to go back inside. Problem.
It was
It
low.
was one of those fire escape doors.
Oh,
The ones that only open from the inside.
oh,
I was trapped out there with him.
oh, this is stupid. This is
Come
so
with me now,
stupid.
Scott, he said. I insist. No thanks, Tommy.
I've been like, okay.
Really not in the mood.
I've been, oh, drop something. Like,
Tommy
right
was
in the
much
nuts.
bigger than me, and his size and demeanor were quite intimidating. I was only 5'6".
He's
like
only
David
6'3",
and
but
Goliath.
I'm 6'2", so I mean,
Still, I stood my ground, refusing to go with him every time he insisted. I'd never felt more alone than in that moment. I eyed Goliath over. At last, he said something. I know what you're thinking, Scott. You're thinking, well, you should hit me if you have to take me down. If I try to do something,
that's exactly what I've been thinking.
what you should do, where you should run, what you should shout. He stepped closer to me. But you can't do nothing, Scott. If I want to hurt you, there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
Oh, well, you don't feel pain,
There
motherfucker?
was an eerie silence as he stared at me for what must have been a half minute. Then, deeply, and I want to hurt you, Scott. I want to hurt you real bad. I was paralyzed with fear.
Shit.
Come on, man, I said. Don't be like this. His eyes stared at me with a fiery intensity, wide and soulless.
This dude been
Otherwise,
wanting to
his
kill
expression was
somebody.
disturbingly neutral. Not a moment too soon, my buddies from before came walking around the corner of the building. They'd asked my date where I'd gone, and she told them I went outside. Remembering Tommy from earlier, they both began to worry about me
Well,
and came to check that I
you got
was
some
okay.
good friends, though.
You can't put a price on good friends, let me tell you. They saw Tommy trapping me against the wall and came running. Tommy sprinted away, disappearing into the trees. He was big, but he knew he couldn't take all three of us. We went back inside and told one of our teachers what had
You
happened.
should have told this before.
In the end, nothing came of it.
Idiot. Oh, they ain't
I
do shit
avoided
anyway,
Tommy
so
after
fuck it. Fuck adults.
Graduation came and went, and life went on as normal. I erased the Tommy incident from my mind entirely. Years later, while surfing the internet, I decided to look up all my old friends and see what became of them. Many had married, others seemed to be doing well in their own way. On a whim, I decided to check Tommy's name on Facebook as well.
Check Tommy, they got almost murdered.
Couldn't find him. I googled his name instead. I was shocked by what I found, but I can't say I was the least bit surprised. Tommy was serving a life sentence in prison after taking the life of his college roommate.
He actually went to
He
college.
used a hatchet.
I'm surprised. You think about how you gonna hurt me? Like, yeah, I'm thinking about taking my thumb and just jamming it in the corner of your eye and popping your eyeball out. Like they're ripping your balls
This
off.
is a bizarre story that happened when I was 16. I never knew my grandparents. They both passed before I was even born, but there was always a little piece of them in my home growing up. My mother, their daughter, kept a couple of souvenirs that belonged to them in our living room. They were two ornamental bears made of china, one brown, one white. Other than their different colors, they were identical. I never liked the things myself. There was something uncanny about them. Their eyes always seemed a little too real for me. Not like bear eyes at all. Too much white in them. Too much humanness, if that makes sense. But that was neither here nor there. There were, of course, other things in our home that reminded my mother of her parents, but those two bears always stood out to me, as they were always displayed proudly on the window ledge. Apparently, my grandparents were really great people. My whole family agreed that I would have adored them. One night, I remember having a really vivid dream about those two bears. So vivid, in fact, that it still burned into my mind
Oh,
all these years
this
later.
flame is like it's mesmerizing.
In the dream, I'm laying on an operating table in a hospital ER, completely alone and confused. There's no sound whatsoever, just total silence. Even my own movements are inaudible. In the dream, I managed to stand up and go for the door. I clutched the handle, but something stops me. I turn back to look at the table I just got up from. It's red, and there are tools scattered all over the floor around it. And something else. On the now stained red table are two familiar objects. The brown and white bears, their pale, human-like eyes staring into what felt like my very soul. It was horrible, like one of those dreams where you can feel the pain and terror. I felt a burning in my chest that wouldn't go away, the true definition of a nightmare. Inexplicably, one of the bears moves to the edge of the table and falls, breaking into 1,000 pieces without a sound. That's where the dream ended. I woke up a few days later in the hospital.
What?
I hadn't been dreaming in my bed at home at all. I'd actually been in an operating theatre.
Oh, wow.
The setting for the dream itself had been real. The surgeons only barely managed to save me, and apparently they lost me for a minute before bringing me back to life. Apparently I'd been in a car wreck. My girlfriend Rebecca had been in the vehicle with me. Her father was driving. The crash was real bad. Neither of them made it.
Oh, wow.
Unbeknownst to me, this had all happened on prom night. I don't remember anything about my prom. Not how I got there, what I did, who I saw. Only the stories that were told to me after the fact. The crash had wiped that night clean out of my mind. A few people said they saw me get into the car with Rebecca's father at the end of the evening, A toxicology report later revealed that our old man had been drinking when he came to pick us up. He always seemed like such a level-headed and responsible guy, so I'll never understand that. While driving me back to my place, he swerved over into the wrong lane and hit another vehicle head-on.
Sheesh.
Luckily, the driver in that car was okay, though he too came close to losing his life. Thankfully, there were some amazing surgeons on call that night. The strangest part of this story, however, came after I was well enough to go home. I got myself discharged, and my mother drove me back to our house. I, of course, was a little nervous about getting back into a car after hearing what had happened, but I managed to set those fears aside. We go inside, and I make my way into the living room. There's only one of the ornamental bears on the window ledge, the brown one. The white one's nowhere to be seen. I asked my mum why she had moved it.
So she didn't.
She told me. It's the strangest thing.
Oh no, if...
The white one just fell from the ledge and shattered. No idea how. Obviously, she had had no reason to tell me about this while I was in hospital. Her mind was on other matters, like my recovery, and I hadn't told her about the dream I had had while in the operating theatre. She went on to tell me that it smashed the night I went to prom. I put two and two together and finally confided in her about my dream. This all happened 10 years ago. I've mostly gotten over the trauma, though I still get the occasional flashback and feelings of survivor's guilt. I can't help but feel I was somehow being protected that night by two relatives I'd never even had the pleasure of meeting. My grandparents. Even now, my mother and I sometimes catch ourselves looking at that lonely, brown ornamental bear on the living room window ledge, and, half-jokingly, say that I've still got one spare life left if I ever need to use it.
I really liked that one. And that flame, that was like, I was just staring at it. I just couldn't look away from it. That's fucked up. First I thought you were going to say he was in hell or something. But I guess he was seeing the tools and the table was red because
younger,
that was
we
his
had
blood.
our prom out in this old hall.
And the tools were the
Central
surgeon's
Idaho.
tools.
It was a rural area, not much in the surrounding area. You could probably say it was the middle of nowhere, if that wasn't extremely cliche. There was, however, an old, abandoned house, about a 5-minute walk away from the venue the prom was being held in. The night progressed as intended. There was awkward dancing, secret drinking, some people embarrassing themselves, and some people getting lucky. Some winners, some losers. I myself was one of
Sounds
the
like
losers
life.
who none of the girls wanted to dance with.
Damn.
And at one point near the end
Stuck
of the
up,
night, a
bitches.
few buddies and I decided to check out the abandoned house that we heard was nearby. More fun than sitting around in the hall feeling sorry for ourselves, at least. As we approached the abandoned house, we noticed something strange. A flickering light in one of the ground floor rooms. It was like candlelight. Guess the place wasn't so abandoned after all, I figured. Still, we got closer to check the place out. We'd come this far.
There's fucking noise in the background.
We got close enough to get a relatively decent view inside the living room.
Very effective.
The room where the light was coming from. Strange. There was no furniture inside at all, and the place looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. We shrugged it all off.
Was it an
and started
abandoned
to head
house?
back to the prom hall. We didn't want to trespass or anything. As we turned to leave, we heard a noise come from the back of the property.
Back up the
It
property.
was a truck's engine, roaring. In no time at all, the truck came screaming around the back of the house, its headlights lighting us up. It sped off past us.
The monster
going
from
across the
Jeepers
fields.
Creepers.
There wasn't even a road or anything. Soon, it disappeared into the darkness. What the heck was that about? We asked ourselves. We walked back to the prom hall and didn't bother mentioning the story to anyone. After all, what was there to tell, really? At the end of the night, we realized we should have spoken up sooner. 4 of our fellow students, 3 females and 1 male, had gone missing. It was a group of friends who always hung out together. One of their other friends said that they had gone off to explore the abandoned house earlier in the evening. When they hadn't returned, she assumed it was just because they were out having fun there. the authorities were notified, and they went to explore the abandoned house that we'd been to check earlier. Inside, they found the male student, bound, gagged, and unconscious on the living room floor, the room that we had looked into. If we had gotten closer to the window, we would have spotted him lying there. The females were nowhere to be seen. When the male student finally came to, he said he had no memory about what had happened. The last thing he remembered was approaching the old house. Me and my friend spoke up about the truck we had seen speeding off along the fields. Now the main theory is that someone, or someones, took the female students, and that they were in the truck we saw speed past us. Perhaps they'd seen us approaching the house and we spooked them.
Sex traffickers,
Who knows?
probably.
Either way, those students were never seen or heard from again. We still don't know where they were taken, or what happened to them after that night.
Damn. That's fucked up. Anytime I hear about people just going missing and then never seen or heard from again, it's just, it fucks with me.
This is a story my uncle told me that happened during his high school prom. I can't vouch for how accurate all the details are, but I can vouch for my uncle. He's an honest guy, and I can't see him just making something like this up. Anyway, here's his story. This was back in the 60s, in Spokane, Washington, and my uncle was at his
Spokane.
prom with his date, hanging out with all his friends, and generally just having a great time.
Their relatives up there.
There was another student at the prom that my uncle wasn't very close with, just an acquaintance. His name was Gary. According to my uncle, he saw Gary hanging out with his buddies and having fun. Nothing was out of place about him, and everything seemed totally normal. Then, at some point during the evening, a group of other students saw Gary wander off into a nearby forest by himself. Apparently, he went out there to enjoy some of nature's finest herb, if you catch my drift.
Fucking Gary.
Anyway,
Well, he
the
did
night
this
went
at
on,
night?
and my uncle and his friends all had a blast. Thing is, Gary didn't return to the venue. Everyone just assumed he went home.
Because Gary turned into a fucking
That turned
werewolf.
out not to be the case.
Oh,
Gary never made it home that night.
shit.
His parents contacted the authorities the next morning. They of course searched the forest area where he'd last been seen walking into, but there was no trace of the poor guy anywhere. Rumors started circulating about what happened to him. As time went by, everyone assumed the worst. Gary's parents never gave up on their search for him though. Then, 22 years after he had vanished, against all of the odds, a man wearing a tuxedo was found wandering in those very woods. It was Gary. Visually, he was 22 years older, but he acted as if a day hadn't even passed since the night of the prom. He seemed confused and disoriented, and was taken to the hospital for examination. When interviewed, the man said that he was indeed Gary, that he was 17, and that only the night before he'd been to his school prom. Well, just from looking at him, you could tell he was 39, but he remained adamant that he was still in high school. His wallet contained a driver's license that was issued back in the 60s, along with his student ID. Both were indeed the real Garys. When his parents arrived to identify him, they immediately recognized the man as their son. They were elated. Gary, on the other hand, was shocked. His parents were old now, but in his mind, only one night had passed. Gary's body was in the 1980s, but his mind was still back in the early 60s. Over the next few hours,
what the
medical staff
fuck?
convinced Gary that he had indeed been missing for the past 2 decades.
What the fuck was he eating?
They even showed him cutouts from newspapers to prove it. As you can imagine, he kind of lost his mind a little after that. My uncle doesn't know much more about what happened to Gary after that. Like I said at the start, him and Gary weren't close to begin with. Still, if it's true, it's a crazy story. How did Gary survive out in those woods for so many years, if indeed that's where he'd been? And, more pressingly, why did he have no memory of all of those years? I've heard of people having crazy trips where they think their whole life has passed, only for them to wake up the next morning to find out they'd been living a phantom reality, but I've never heard of anything like this.
Yeah, going 20, is it 22 years?
Scary.
It was like, what the fuck was he eating and doing? And he's still in the same outfit? Or the same tuxedo that he had when he went into the woods when he was 17? And that's a weird story.
And this story just happened last year. I work as
he
a
didn't gain
receptionist at a
or
hotel,
lose anyway.
and we often hold high school proms here, as we have a big hall and a stage. In order to get to the hall, you have to pass the reception desk. It was prom night, and it was already underway. All the students and teachers were in the dance hall. All the pictures had been taken, and the reception area was empty. At some point during the evening, someone approached the reception desk. I looked up to see a tall man standing there. He had a clean-shaven face, and his hair was greasy and tied back in a ponytail. He was also wearing a suit that was pretty old and dirty, along with some Adidas shoes. His eyes were wide open, and he said, "I'm here for the prom." At first I thought he was kidding, but he looked completely serious.
Here for the prom.
I said, are you employed by the school? No, I'm a student here.
I'm here for the young ones.
I still kept thinking he was joking. He looked to be in his late 40s, and he was telling me he was a high school student? So I asked him, "How old are you?" He said, "I'm 17.
I knew it.
16. Yeah, I'm 16. At this point, I thought he must have taken something.
Get the fuck out of here, dude.
I said, "I'm sorry, but you don't look 16 at all." He just stared at me, not saying a word, with his eyes wide, staring right at me. He then leaned over to me and said, "I'll make you a deal. I have a big blade in my pocket. If I'm not 16,
This sounds
you can cut my
familiar.
finger off. If I
I think
am
somebody
16,
else told this
I can
story.
cut your finger off." I didn't get a chance to say anything, because he walked right out of the front door after he said that. I told my boss about what happened. He said if the guy came back, he'd deal with it.
Guy comes back, I'll kick
I
his
finished my
ass.
shift around midnight, and then went back to get in my car. There was an envelope under my windshield wiper. Written on it was, "A deal is a deal." I opened the envelope to see a human finger,
Oh boy.
and I had a feeling this wasn't his finger due to it being a different color. I never saw that man again, and I've always wondered why he was trying to get into that prom.
Try to get more fingers. So 2 minutes left. You gonna talk or something?
Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. Before this video ends, I'd just like to give a huge shout out to all of my
Hey
supporters on
guys, lazy.
especially.
What was the other dude? He's like, hey guys, something spooky here or something. I can't remember. He does, his narrations too. But, yeah, that last one. Yeah, that dude went, he cut somebody else's finger. I don't know if he killed him, but he definitely took somebody's finger. Yeah, Prom is, it seemed like everybody who told these stories had some bad experience like that. Guess, oh, no one wanted to dance with me, or other guy, he went to prom, but he didn't actually talk about what happened because he don't remember. He was in a car accident, which I guess fucked up his memory. And that story, sheesh, like that was rough. That was a rough story. It was great. It's probably one of the best stories on here, but that was rough. But and that other motherfucker, wasn't they Tommy? Fuck Tommy. I'd have whooped Tommy's ass. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I did not like bullies because I was bullied as a kid. And then when I hit like between 12 and 13, I remember in my 13th year. I didn't turn 13 yet, but I was turning 13 that year. I had a growth spurt. So I started like getting really tall really fast and gaining like a lot of weight really quick because I was really skinny when I was a little kid. Like I was so skinny. I think I was in the third grade. I had a teacher. It might have been the second grade. Not a teacher, but he was a teacher. He was a teacher. She wasn't vice principal. She was a teacher. She told me. She asked me. She asked me to wait before I left at the end of the day. She said she wanted to talk to you for a second. I was okay. And she took forever. I'm standing. I'm like, I want to leave because if I don't get home fast, my dad he's gonna be pissed off. He gonna instantly think I went somewhere I wasn't supposed to because it didn't seem like I came straight home even though I did because I'm here with your ass and I'm gonna get a beating. I was like, so can we hurry this up? But she asked me. She said my parents feeding me, and I remember thinking I was like, yeah, I eat plenty. I was like, what do you mean? I was just thinking, I said, yeah, I just see I eat plenty. And then she just looked really skinny. I just wanna, and she said, you sure? She said, she was like trying to like, you could tell me and all this stuff. I guess she think I was lying for my parents. I was like, no, I eat. And I just thought it was weird. Because there was other kids in that class that was skinny too. One kid was actually, if I remember correctly, it was two kids, a light skinned kid, because he had really like crazy looking eyes. Like his eyes was like, he kind of reminded me of Michael Ealy, except his eyes was almost like, they weren't green. They was like gray, but now like my cousin has gray eyes. He's light skinned, but his like kind of like almost like a cool gray type color. But his eyes was like almost like, don't start that shit. My phone's starting that shit. His eyes, it was like, I guess you could say when people say blear eye. It's like it was weird. It was really bright eyes, and he just looked almost like them zombie eyes. But he was real skinny, and his other kid was real skinny. He was tall. He was tall, a little bit taller than me at that age. But I was short. We all short. It was like the second, third grade. But he was like tall for his age, and they were skinny too. So I was like, why is she? I just thought that was weird. I was like, why is she asking me? I was like, I'm not really any skinnier than they are. So I was like, but I was just really skinny as a kid. Then I got growth spurt, and I first started gaining a bunch of weight. And then I started getting taller with it, so I started, the size started getting proportionate. But I used to, like, I hated, as when I got older, I hated bullets. When I was like 14. Well, actually, I was like 13. When I started boxing more. My dad taught me how to box. Well, street box anyway. Then I started going to like the gym. I started practicing martial arts a lot more. Stuff like that. And I was like, no one will ever bully me ever again. And I said, I will not tolerate bullying around me. So I fought with bullies, people bullying people. I don't tolerate that. I said, you want to fight? I said, I'll be glad to give you a fight, son. So like that motherfucker coming up talking about something. Oh, I know what you're thinking. You thinking that, well, how you gonna hurt me if you can? I'd hit that motherfucker right in the throat right then. Y'all seen, I might put it in if I remember, it was a He Got Game. It was Denzel Washington and, I forget the basketball player's name, but his name in the movie was Jesus Shuttlesworth. And I remember the scene where Denzel Washington was his father. And he hit, it was some guy that his son's girlfriend introduced him to, like, I guess be his like agent or something. And Denzel had just gotten out of jail, so he was like one of those old school kind of like hood type guys, real aggressive type guys. And he said, I can't remember, he said something to Denzel, and Denzel was like, what? He like hit him in the throat, and the dude was like, he was like, what? Why can't you? And then he just grabbed the back of his head. I was like, God. And knocked his ass. Oh, that'd have been exactly what I would do. Like, I'd have hit him straight in the throat or kicked him in his knee. Like, you smell like that shit works. I kicked the guy bigger than me in the knee, smashed his ass. Like, we had already actually started tussling, and he threw me up against a car. But I didn't let go of the back of his neck, so we like this, and he holding on like the kind of held back of my neck, and I remember like just kicking like his knee like out, it's in the side, inside his knee, and kicked it like out, and made him stumble. I got his ass on the ground. I had his ass in a full Nelson in the dirt. It's funny because I've had a few fights where they always turn to tussle matches because most people don't know how to fight. Like we be throwing punches, and all of a sudden, if you especially they starting to lose, maybe I could overpower them. They start tussling, and I did that with a cousin. He's like, "Hey, you want to fight?" Okay, but he was like, he didn't want to throw punches because we were just playing. But at least I thought we were playing. But he was like seriously trying to like hurt me. He was at this age, I think I was 14. I mean 15, and I was 6 foot, or maybe like 5'11", and he was way taller. I think he was like 6'2". He was tall dude, and I think he topped out at, because we were both the same age. He was way taller than me. Well, no, he was 16. I remember he was 16, but I think he was 6'3". I think. I saw him again when we were like right before, or a year before I left down south. I was like 17. And he was like 6'6" or something like that. But yeah, that's the other thing he topped off at. But we ended up having a fight. Like, you wanna fight? And he like, I remember we grabbed and tussled each other. I would throw each other because he pushed me up against. I think it was my dad's car we was by. Because he, you know what? I tell you that he fought my cousin. That was there. Well, I guess he both our cousins because we were cousins too. But he fought him first. Tripped him. The fight lasted maybe like a few seconds. He tripped him and got him on the ground because it's basically like whoever gets who on the ground first. And he beat him, and then he wanted to fight me. And I said, take your time, breathe, because he was out of breath. Like I said, only lasted like about 10, 20, maybe 20 seconds. And then we start fighting. And he pushed me against the car, and I remember swinging him up against the car, and we tussling. And he tried to trip me, and I remember he did that to my cousin and tripped him because my cousin was getting the better of him, and he ended up tripping him. So he tried that with me, and I picked up my leg and stepped like around him, grabbed him, and then like hit threw his ass. And the thing was, because it's supposed to be when you go in the ground, you lost. He jumps back up, grabs me, and slams me into the car. And I'm like, now I'm getting pissed because I'm like, these were your rules. I grabbed him again, and somehow I don't remember. I got around him, and I got him in a full Nelson, and I was holding one of his legs. I wrapped one of my legs like around his leg in between it, and I don't know. Like I pushed him. I kept like trying to push him down. I ended up getting him down and made him trip pretty much. Fell on his chest. Had him in a full Nelson. Just straightened out his arms like this. He had his face in the dirt. He had like a bunch of dirt. And he was all right. He kept calling me like a cop. So he's like, I guess that's what cops do. They put you in full Nelsons. I'm like, all right. It was like they take me down like a police officer. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed my reaction. If you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe if you're new here. Hit the bell. You want to be uploaded. If you want to be notified when I upload new videos. Share this video. Comment down below. I'll see you next time. Peace.